This house wasn't on the map yesterday. I've walked this path my entire life. It's no grand trail or scenic route, nothing you'd find in a guidebook. It's just a simple shortcut, a worn-down strip of dirt that connects the old county road to the back of my neighborhood. This path is etched into the soles of my shoes, into the back of my mind. I know every crack in the pavement where it starts, every stubborn root that snakes across the trail, the exact spot where the smell of pine needles gives way to the damp, earthy scent of the creek. For 30 years, this path has been a constant, a predictable line through a landscape that never, ever changes. I've walked it in the blistering summer heat, the quiet autumn chill, and under the heavy silence of snow. Nothing ever changes. The field to the left is always empty, except for the tall grass and that one gnarled oak tree, the one that leans like it's tired of standing. But this morning was different. This morning, a fog rolled through, and it wasn't the usual mist that burns off with the sun. This was a thick, heavy blanket of gray. It swallowed sound and light, clinging to everything with a cold, damp weight. It felt ancient, unnatural. Walking through it, I couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. My own hand would vanish if I held it out too far. The air grew still. The usual birdsong was just gone, replaced by an unnerving silence. When the fog finally started to lift, thinning into ghostly wisps, I saw it, and my world fractured. Where the empty field has been for 30 years, there now stands a towering Gothic mansion. Section 1, the anomaly. My first thought wasn't fear, it was just profound, head-spinning confusion. I stopped dead in my tracks. A building that big, a 3-story house of dark red brick and sharp, aggressive angles. It doesn't just appear overnight, it's impossible. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, half expecting it to be a trick of the light, some phantom left over by the fog. But it stayed, solid, imposing. It was a structure ripped right out of another time. It had the rigid, brick symmetry of a Georgian house, but twisted with a Gothic nastiness. Steeply pitched roofs cut into the sky like jagged teeth. Tall, narrow windows stared out like vacant eyes, their glass so dark it seemed to suck in the morning light. A single, round tower jutted from the left side, topped with a conical roof like a witch's hat. Ornate, wrought iron lacework clung to the gables, dark and intricate like frozen spider webs. It was the kind of place you read about in dusty old novels. A house that felt gloomy and sad. A house that, just by looking at it, you knew had to be haunted. But the most unsettling part wasn't the house itself. It was the total lack of context. There was no driveway, no gravel path leading to the door. The house just rose from the untouched grass, as if it had been dropped from the sky. No power lines connected it to the world. No tire tracks scarred the soft earth around it. It was completely and terrifyingly isolated. The air around it even felt colder, a pocket of unnatural chill that made the hairs on my arms stand up. The silence was the worst part, though. The birds hadn't come back. Even the wind in the trees had stopped. All sound seemed to be absorbed by those dark brick walls. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, a war raging in my head. Every instinct screamed at me to turn around, run home, lock the door, and pretend this impossible thing didn't exist. But a deeper, more dangerous curiosity was taking hold. I had to know. I had to understand. I took a shaky breath that did nothing to calm my hammering heart, and I stepped off the familiar path. Section 2, the approach. Each step toward that house felt wrong. The grass was wet and cold against my ankles, and a strange smell filled the air, a mix of things I couldn't quite place. Wet concrete after a storm, the sharp tang of ozone, and underneath it all, the faint, sweet smell of decay. My senses were screaming. I was walking into a place that played by its own rules, and they didn't feel friendly. The closer I got, the more overwhelming the mansion became. Details sharpened, each one adding a new layer of dread. The dark red bricks were old, weathered, stained with something that looked like soot. The pointed arches above the windows were severe, casting deep, black shadows. I could just make out ornate carvings near the roofline, gargoyles maybe, their features eroded into vaguely menacing shapes. I circled the perimeter, my feet feeling heavy, like I was moving through water. There were no signs of life, no gardens, no back door, no cellar entrance, just wall after wall of silent, watching windows. It felt less like a building and more like a monument or a tomb. I found myself back at the front. A short flight of stone steps led up to a heavy wooden door, flanked by 2 dead iron lanterns. The door was massive, carved from a wood so dark it was nearly black, with a heavy iron ring for a handle. As I stared, my heart pounding in my ribs, I noticed something that made a cold knot of fear tighten in my stomach. The door was slightly ajar. A sliver of absolute darkness lay in that gap. It wasn't just shadow, it was a profound void, a slice of night the morning sun couldn't touch. It was an invitation, a dare. Every sane part of my brain was wailing, "Turn around, run, do not go inside." But the silence from within was a question I couldn't leave unanswered. I thought of my path, now forever changed. I thought of the empty field that wasn't empty anymore. This thing had invaded my reality. I couldn't just walk away. Slowly, as if in a trance, I walked up the stone steps. The cold intensified, raising goosebumps on my skin. I reached out a trembling hand, the metallic smell of ozone growing stronger. I hesitated for one last agonizing second, my fingers hovering just inches from the wood. Then I pushed. Section 3. The interior. The air that rolled out of the house was ancient, a thick, musty wave of dust, decay, and time itself. It smelled of forgotten books, dried out wood, and something else. Something faintly metallic and deeply unsettling. The door swung inward without a sound, opening into a grand foyer that was simply impossible. From the outside, the house was big, but this was cavernous. The ceiling soared into a darkness so high, I couldn't see where it ended. A grand staircase, wide enough for 10 people to walk side by side, curved up into the gloom. The inside was a labyrinth of Gothic vaults and shadows, far bigger than the exterior walls could possibly hold. It was like stepping into a place where the logic of the outside world had been thrown out at the door. My footsteps, silent on the grass, now echoed unnervingly on the marble floor. The sound was wrong, too loud, as if announcing my presence to whatever was waiting. The light from the open door didn't get far, dying just a few feet inside as the shadows ate it. The only other light came from the tall, narrow windows, but they only let in a weak, gray twilight that painted everything in shades of despair. I walked deeper in, pulled by some morbid curiosity. I ran my hand along a wall, and my fingers came back coated in a thick, greasy layer of dust. Everything was preserved in a state of perfect decay. A long hallway stretched to my left, lined with closed doors. I felt an overwhelming sense of being watched, not by a person, but by the house itself. The feeling was a heavy pressure on my chest. Then I heard it, a whisper. It was faint, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. A dry, slithering sound that wasn't quite human. It wasn't any words I could understand, but the intent was clear. It was a sound of ancient misery, a sorrow so deep it had stained the air itself. I froze, straining to listen. The whispering stopped. The hall fell back into dead silence. My breath hitched. I turned to leave, to run back to the safety of the sun. But as I did, My eyes caught something on a small, dust-covered table. A little silver hand mirror, tarnished with age. I don't know why, but I picked it up. It was heavier than it looked, and cold to the touch. In the grimy, reflective surface, I didn't see my own reflection. For a split second, I saw the face of a woman, pale and gaunt, with long, dark hair, and eyes filled with a terrifying emptiness. I dropped the mirror. It clattered on the floor, the sound shattering the silence and echoing endlessly down the hall. That's when the whispering started again, closer this time, coiling around me. And from one of the rooms down the hall, I heard another sound, a soft, rhythmic creak. Creak, creak, like a rocking chair. That was it, the breaking point. The curiosity shattered, replaced by pure, primal terror. I didn't think, I just ran. I sprinted back through the foyer, my frantic footsteps swallowed by the impossible space. The darkness seemed to grasp at my clothes. I burst through the doorway and didn't stop. I flew down the steps, not daring to look back, lungs burning, and ran across the field, back to the worn dirt of the path. My path, my anchor to reality. Only when my feet hit the familiar, solid ground did I risk a glance over my shoulder. The field was empty. The house was gone. No sign it had ever been there. Just the tall grass swaying in the breeze and the single, gnarled oak tree, leaning to the side exactly as it had for 30 years. Conclusion: it's been a week. I still walk the path. I have to. It's my way home. But it's not a place of comfort anymore. Every time I pass the field, I feel a phantom chill. I can still smell the dust and decay on the air, a scent no one else seems to notice. The world looks the same, but I know it's not. I know how thin the veil of our reality is, how easily it can be torn open by something that just doesn't belong. I keep telling myself it was a dream, a hallucination brought on by the strange fog. But then, late at night, when my own house is quiet, I'll find myself reaching into my pocket. My fingers close around something cold, small, and heavy. When I pull it out, I see the faint, tarnished gleam of a little silver hand mirror. I haven't dared to look into it again. The house might have vanished, but I have this terrible, sinking feeling that I didn't leave alone. What would you have done? Would you have gone inside? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to hear more stories about places that shouldn't exist, make sure to subscribe.